Hello, welcome to this Governance and Audit Committee of Tydfil County Borough Council. It's Monday the 22nd of June, it's 5 p.m. We'll do a little juggling of the published agenda order, just to cover off the proper processes. Agenda item 4 talks about the appointment of chair and vice chair. There's been a conversation beforehand about a likely chair, but the note says to approve the continued appointment of Martin Veal as chair and Colin Poss as vice chair of the Governance and Audit Committee. We just need to check if there are any other dissenting voices from that, and then I can sit in the. I can then continue the meeting. So, are there any dissenting voices? Anybody else wants to suggest themselves to be chair? Noting that only lay members can be chairs of this committee.
No, carry on, guys. You're doing a great job.
Okay, I'll take that resounding silence. Resounding silence as an endorsement. So thank you, Geraint. Okay, that was just get the procedural stuff out of the way so we can return to the published batting order. Agenda item 1 is apologies for absence. Have we had any apologies for absence?
Michelle Simmons, chair. There.
Oh, she's here.
Don't mind. Oh, Michelle, we had apologies for you. Sorry, I didn't see you.
No, that's okay. That's all right.
I'll change the system. Thank you.
Who's not here? I can't see Councillor Thomas. Councillor Ian Thomas. Everybody else, I think, is present. So, shall we note Councillor Ian Thomas's absence? Do we note that? Declaration of interest. Any declaration of interest relevant to today's business that anyone wishes to make? Again, I don't see anybody, so we will move on again. First paper of the bundle is agenda item 3, which is the minutes of the meeting way back on the 3rd of April. To approve and enter into the record. There they are on page 5, 6, 7. I'll go through page by page. If anyone's got any issues, please shout. Otherwise, we will agree them. So, formally to approve, can we have a proposer and seconder? Thank you. And seconder? Thank you, Sue. Okay, thank you. So agreed. We'll now quickly move on to agenda item 5, because we've done 4, and we'll pick up the Head of Internal Audit's Annual Report 25-26. I'll hand over to Andrew Wathen, Head of the Regional Internal Audit Service Online. Afternoon, Andrew.
Afternoon, Chair. Afternoon, members. So thanks for the introduction. So this is one of the key documents I bring to committee on an annual basis, and it's my annual report, which gives an overall opinion on the adequacy and the effectiveness of the internal control environment, risk management processes and governance arrangements within the council based on the work that we've undertaken during 25-26. So this report is looking backwards in the work that we've actually done, which concludes in my overall opinion. It needs to comply with the global internal audit standards. As a requirement of that, I need to make sure there's an opinion on the adequacy and effectiveness of the council's framework for governance, risk management and internal control, present a summary of the audit work undertaken, draw attention to any issues that might impact on the opinion, provide a summary of the performance of the team, and comment on the conformance with the global internal audit standards. So hopefully bringing all that together is within the body of the report. So you'll see in Appendix A there's quite a detailed report, but overall, Chair, it's a positive news story in that we've achieved our performance of coverage according to the 25-26 plan, and the opinions which we've issued are more positive than negative. So I'll just go through those in a bit more detail if I could. In terms of getting to the annual opinion, it's based on the opinion-related work that we undertake during the year and any other assurances that we can get from a third party or other work that we undertake, other work is undertaken. So that is based on individual internal audits, and the opinions there with the definitions, just for a background, are shown at 2.2 of Appendix 1. And they are substantial, reasonable, limited, and no assurance. And they then feed into the overall opinion for the year end, which I'll come to in a moment in terms of the completion of the report. So good news in terms of Table 2. were over 94% of the opinions that we issued were either substantial or reasonable. Only 2 were limited, so that puts the authority in a really good place. In Table 3, we've done a comparison of the level of assurance based on the opinions which we've issued over the last 3 years, and you can see that there's an improving picture there. In terms of completion of the plan, we achieved 88% of the plan compared to a target of 80%. That related to opinion-related work and non-opinion-related work. As you can see in Table 4, the opinions which we were either at final stage or draft stage at the year end were 36, with 30 being finalised and 6 being in draft. So really good in terms of coverage across service areas and enough coverage enabling me to give an overall opinion. In terms of the limited assurance opinions, I've provided a bit more detail there, Chair. So there's the Children's Services Petty Cash and the Home to School Transport, including ALM Transport Follow-up Audit. Just to note to members, that report is still in draft and we're in negotiation with service managers to bring that to a final conclusion and a final audit report. With the individual audits, we feel that they're balanced reports based on strengths and weaknesses. Where we identify weaknesses, then we would include a recommendation and a management action plan for the service manager to implement to make the improvements moving forward. And we categorise those recommendations into a high, medium or low priority. So moving to Table 5 at 4.2, there are very few high recommendations, again putting the authority in a good position. The majority of recommendations are either medium or low, which leads to the fact that there is generally good governance across the board. Where we have follow-up audits, we would only look into high and medium recommendations. Although we make low recommendations in the report, we believe they're for the managers to deal with at a local level, because generally therefore best practice. We have got an unusual situation at 4.5 in that some of the recommendations that we've made have not been agreed by the service managers, and we'll follow those through in terms of Q1 to make sure that the relevant head of service is also in agreement with that non-agreement with our recommendations. So moving on to counter fraud. Merthyr's got its own fraud officer and we support her in undertaking her work, and there have been 3 corporate frauds that we've been involved with and supported during the year. They're outlined on Table 6. We also get involved with the collating of the National Fraud Initiative and issuing the data out to service areas and collating any savings which have resulted from further testing in relation to the National Fraud Initiative. Moving on to key performance measures and the client satisfaction questionnaire. At the end of our reports, when we finalise our reports, we send out questionnaires to service managers. Pleasing to note this year that we had a 77% return rate, which is positive, and within that there's a 96% satisfaction rate of how the audit was performed and the professional way in which the auditors conducted themselves. Just for information, I've included some commentary there within the report. 6.5. I'm happy to take on board positive comments and good, bad or indifferent. And if we get constructive criticism, it helps me change things if we need to improve the service we deliver moving forward. As a management team, we're really keen to support our staff through professional qualifications. We've got 2 graduate auditors with us at the moment, and they're in the final stages of CIPFA, just waiting on results at the moment. And we've got 4 members of staff going through the IIA exams and 1 member of staff going through the IT CIPFA exams. So we're keen to support CPD as well, and there's a list of courses that the team have attended at 7.3. We are part of the Welsh Chief Auditors Group, which is a benchmarking exercise. Unfortunately, the data hasn't been collected for the last couple of years, so we're back on the case, and 25-26 data has been collected. Once that has been circulated, I can share that with committee. Just to reconfirm, we are compliant with the global internal audit standards. There's a bit of background there at 9.1, what they relate to. We do have 5 domains, so apologies because the last one is missed out on the bullet points, and that should be performing, how we actually undertake the work at an operational level. And on an annual basis, we undertake a self-assessment of compliance with the global internal audit standards. This year, that was undertaken by one of our auditors, and which resulted in a substantial audit. Every 5 years, we'll have to go out to an external assessor, and within the Welsh Chief Auditors Group, we undertake a peer assessment. So there'll be another Chief Internal Auditor from one of the Welsh authorities coming in to have a look at us to make sure that we are, as we say, compliant. Bit of background about the Regional Internal Audit Service, Chair, how we operate, where we're looking to expand and develop, and all of that information then leads into my overall opinion, which is set out on section 11. Based on the internal control framework, I'll split it over risk management, governance, and internal control. All 3 are reasonable assurance opinions, which leads into my overall opinion, which is a reasonable level of assurance for 25-26. Then, Chair, we move into the annexes. There's a list of audit opinion jobs with the opinions, number of recommendations made. There's a progress against the audit plan. Then Annex 2 with a bit more detail in terms of whether was the report finalised at draft report stage or ongoing at the year end, again with the opinions and the number of recommendations made. And then Annex 3 identifies a number of recommendations that have been made in year, that have been implemented, that are overdue, or have a future target date. And just for information, we've included the questionnaire which we send out to service managers and completion of our report at Annex 4. So that I'm happy with that, Chair. And if I could just refer you back to the recommendation, which is for Governance and Audit Committee to consider and note the annual internal audit report for 25-26, including the Head of Internal Audit's annual opinion on the adequacy and effectiveness of the Council's framework of governance, risk management and internal control. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. A comprehensive report and a comprehensive presentation as well. I guess the key messages for me are twofold. One is that little set of pie charts in figure 1, which shows the level of assurance. And you can see that year on year, the section which is red, the limited section, is reducing. And there's a 3-year chart above that as well, which again shows that direction of travel. And that leads to the overall summary which you just did, Andrew, which talks about the overall level of assurance being reasonable. And I guess maybe it's just worth saying quickly what reasonable means. It's of the grades that are available. It's not substantial, which is the highest grade, but it's certainly kind of above the line and a positive positive outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got definitions in the actual body of the report at 2.2. So the definitions used for our individual reports will be the same as the definition for my overall opinion.
Excellent. Thank you. Questions, comments for Andrew? Yeah, hand over the room. Miss you. Yeah, hi.
Commissioner. Hi, Andrew. Thanks for that report. It definitely gives me as a member a high level of assurance then on the controls, the governance and the risk management arrangements in place in the council. Given that high level of assurance then, I'm just wondering, this question comes not just in terms of this report, but perhaps in respect of your plan going forward for the next year. Whether you think it'd be worthwhile maybe having a deep dive on some of the high risk areas, pertaining, I suppose, to the council. I'm just wondering if there's a little bit more depth. It's great to have that overall assurance, but just looking to dig a little bit deeper, just for that added benefit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Yeah, that's a fair point. I think within the plan, We have an audit which would be classed as risk management, and we would look to pick probably 2 or 3 high risks which are in the corporate risk register to do exactly that, to do a deeper dive into those during the year. That will be determined between ourselves and CMT as to what specific risks we actually look at. But that's certainly something we think about and it's included in our plan.
Helpful.
That's great.
Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Geraint Thomas.
No, thanks, Chair. I just wanted to make a comment, really, just to say, how pleasing it was to read the report. Very positive, and the council's heading in the right, direction. So, well done, guys.
Yeah, I echo that entirely. I did see Councillor Andrew Barry joined, and his hand up was at one moment, but I think he's had sort of connection issues, so he's disappeared. If he comes back, he might have some questions on this. A couple of things from me, if I may. You mentioned, Andrew, that the 3.3, the home to school transport, is a draft report, but clearly there's some issues there you were flagged up. Some of them on the face of it could be quite significant, so you are currently working with management for them to get their action plan together, and you'll report back to us in the normal fashion for that in future meetings.
Absolutely, Jay, yeah.
Okay. And the last one from me was, as you flagged yourself, that you say it's a reasonably uncommon situation where some recommendations that have been made by you as part of the audit have not been accepted by management. I think you said that you just want to kind of check with the head of service to see that they are comfortable with these recommendations being not actioned, because I guess part of the process of agreeing an audit and agreeing the final outcome of an audit is the chance for management to have a conversation with you, and if they disagree, they can argue you're off the point, and assuming you were comfortable with that, you would remove that recommendation. So you aren't, and you haven't removed these recommendations, so you think they're genuine and you think they are worthy of pursuit by management. Yet management, they think they shouldn't. So maybe we can have a little bit of a bigger conversation about that at our next meeting, once you've had the chance perhaps to talk to heads of service to see how significant an issue this is.
Yeah, absolutely. That's no problem from my perspective. Yeah, I think when we do the audit, just to give members a bit of background, when we do the audit, we ask for information, we ask for evidence. Our conclusions are based on the testing we undertake and the evidence is provided to us, and then we issue a draft report. Sometimes when we issue a draft report, there might be some misunderstandings, and if further information is provided at that stage, then we could take that on board in terms of incorporating that into our audit opinion and our recommendations accordingly. So that's just we're pretty comfortable with the recommendations we made because they're evidence based, but we're always up for discussion. But we need to put into context as well. If officers have not provided us with sufficient information at the time, we can't continually keep auditing the same particular job. So we need to draw the line somewhere. But point taken, Chair, and I'll certainly make sure that the directors are aware of this particular issue, and we can report back to committee in due course.
Thank you, Andrew. So we have considered and we note your head of internal audit opinion, which flows, of course, into the governance statement, of which more in a moment. But the next item on the agenda is agenda item 6, which we stay with you, Andrew, is the internal audit strategy and plan for 26-27. So that was looking back, and this is looking forward.
Absolutely, Chair. Yeah, thank you very much. So again, this is in accordance with the global internal audit standards. The expectation is that I put together a risk-based audit plan to enable me then at the year end to provide the level of assurance that's required on the governance, risk management, and internal control environment. So we've put together a strategy, which is how we've put a background in terms of the internal audit team, how we provide internal audit, the fact that we do comply with the global internal audit standards. We are a statutory function in accordance with the council audit regulations. There's a requirement for every local authority to have an internal audit. And in pulling this plan together, we've incorporated the methodology then as well, in terms of looking at the corporate plan, looking at the corporate risk register, identifying any topical requirements from our professional bodies, any concerns raised across the audit world and universe in terms of potential issues, any known problem areas which we've picked up, or any known frauds which need to be looked into in a bit more detail in this particular authority. Not saying that they've happened in this authority, but just awareness to prevent or minimise them happening in the future within Merthyr. And then we circulate that to CLT to give directors and heads of service an opportunity to shape the plan. Ultimately, I'm responsible for delivering it, and it is my plan, but we do allow officers to contribute to it as well, because they might require a level of assurance in a particular area which we haven't thought of. It's an extra pair of eyes for us to do some, as you said, deep dive digging in certain areas. So there's always that possibility. And that said, the plan is not set in stone. It does need to be flexible. So if the risk profile changes, then we'll need to respond to that, and we may have to amend certain things within the plan. If there are significant changes, Chair, then we'll certainly bring those back to committee's attention, so make sure you're aware of those. And then there's a bit in the actual body of the report about how we go about doing an audit itself at an operational level. Again, we note the opinions with a definition, note the level of priorities for the recommendations, and where we do follow-ups with limited assurance opinions, that is a re-audit. It's not just checking that the recommendations have been agreed. We will go back and do a second audit there, and we'll continue to report into Governance and Audit Committee on a quarterly basis, progress against the plan, to give you a level of assurance and the performance of the team. Then at Appendix B, that sets out the work that we intend undertaking based on everything I've just talked about, homes in on individual audit reports and audit areas. So some areas you'll see as, I think I used the example before, is the risk management or schools. So schools is just one line in the plan, but we work with the education team to determine which schools will be audited in this particular year. So they'll be fleshed out as we progress through the year, and you'll get an update of where we are with those on my quarterly updates into committee, Chair. So that's a very brief overview of where we are. If I can take committee back to the recommendation, in that Governance and Audit Committee is recommended to consider and approve the internal audit strategy and annual risk-based audit plan for 26-27. Happy to take any questions, Jeff.
Thank you, Andrew. Really solid report. 44 audits, or they actually might turn out to be more than that because the schools breaks down into a number of other ones. So that's quite a program of work. I guess the question, I think you've kind of answered it, but it's like, why those and not some others? You've been through the process of there's some that didn't quite make the line, and I guess some may bubble up through the year, and some of these may fall away. So it's the only thing we know for sure is this isn't the final list. Stuff will happen as the year goes on. One thing that's kind of caught my eye, because you mentioned it in one of the training courses that you and your staff attended last year, is mentioning AI. Now, AI is coming so fast up upon us, it's already here. And I just wonder whether you're thinking about doing something to keep an eye on how the authority as a whole collectively perhaps has a way of using AI, because I suspect right now it's already being used by lots of different people in lots of different ways. And unless maybe the organisation has a collective policy on that, sooner or later there's a risk that potentially sensitive information could be stuck into ChatGPT or Claude or Copilot, and then that sensitive information is out there in the world, and because once you've shared it somewhere, it's no longer held within the authority. So there are risks associated with that. I wondered whether you're thinking about AI right now.
Thanks, Chair. We certainly are thinking about it. It's just fine-tuning the scope of what we can actually look at. So we've incorporated a line which is ICT systems audits.
Yeah.
It's line 15 on the plan.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
That's quite broad at the moment. Mm-hmm. And again, we'll fine-tune that during the year and talk to senior management to see if we can put some meat on the bone and flesh that one out a bit, and potentially look at AI, and again report back to committee.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. That was the only issue I had. Any other questions for Andrew? Sue.
Thank you, Chair. I suppose, I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, Andrew, because it's hypothetical, I suppose, but I'm just wondering, do you anticipate any obstacles to delivering this plan in the interim? Sometimes, there's always issues with resources. You've highlighted the training that your staff are undertaking, which is credible. I just wondered, is there anything that you're aware of that's, could be a difficulty with delivering the plan as it stands?
Okay, yep. That's an interesting question, isn't it, really? We plan based on the resources we know we've got at the time.
Yeah.
If those resources change, and I need to make sure that we've got adequate resources on board to deliver the plan. If that changes, or I feel the risks increased and we haven't got the resources, then we can certainly buy in additional resources from agency or other internal audit providers, and we've done that in the past. In terms of obstacles, audit is never straightforward. It's not an exact science. We're dealing with people, and some people understand what audit's about. Some people have a different perception of what internal audit's about. So we have to manage that process. On the whole, though, at Merthyr, we have a good relationship with the service managers, and they do provide us with the information and evidence that we request in a timely manner. If that's not done at an operational level, the auditor will raise that with the line manager and raise that, escalate it to me if there's still a problem, and then I'll escalate it to one of the directors to see if we can move it forward. So they're very rare when that happens, but we've got a process in place to deal with it if it does.
Thank you. Yeah. I suppose my follow-up question would, I suppose, out of curiosity, was, again, I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this, but you'll be aware of certain areas that this can arise, I suppose, more than others, maybe, more obstacles with agreeing scopes, agreeing audits, agreeing recommendations than others. Is this, are you aware of a particular area within your scope of work that this may happen, because it's happened historically, so to speak?
Yeah. We're certainly tuned into it. I wouldn't say we've got any problem areas at all within Merthyr. It does depend on the individual and their awareness of what internal audit is about, and we're trying to promote ourselves in a positive way to support people moving forward.
Yeah.
We're not there just to deal with disciplinaries or catch people out. That's just a little bit of our job, is when we get involved with allegations of fraud and we work with the fraud officer. But that's a big part of our job, is to provide assurance. I wouldn't say we've got a major problem across the board with that. As I say, it does determine the knowledge of the individual officer more so than an area that we would need to be concerned around. That said, we issue a range of opinions across the board, and we've done so for a number of years. And the responses we get back from our questionnaires when the reports are finalised, I'm quite surprised that they're so positive, because sometimes we issue an opinion which is not very welcome. It might be a limited report, or there might be a number of recommendations that the service manager was not expecting. But the feedback we get is that they were satisfied with the audit that's been undertaken. So that's reassuring from my perspective, that the team are doing a good job, doing what they need to do, and doing it in a professional manner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. I can see another hand up. It's Councillor Anna Williams-Price, a Cabinet Member. Anna, We can't see you, by the way. I don't know if your camera's working or not. Oh, there you go. As if by magic.
Thanks, Chair. It was just to come back on the point you picked up on regarding AI and for information. There was an information report that came to Council earlier this year to update on the Internet Acceptable Use Policy, which has now been updated to the Internet and Artificial Intelligence policy, which seeks to introduce controls and guidance around the use of AI within the Council. So that's that report was February 2026. So those updates are relatively recent.
Oh, excellent. That's really helpful, Anna. Thank you for that. And Andrew, obviously, we'll take that on board and look at scope. Okay, thank you. That's positive. Anything else for Andrew? In that case, we consider. Sorry, before I first up, Councillor Andrew Barry. Okay, Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you.
Can you see me?
I can. Yeah. Good,
yeah. Happy days. I've had some.
In all its glory.
I'm having one of those IT days today. Two points really. Just to explain, I had the IT issue earlier. I jumped out to that first report because I was declaring interest in that report within
I thought your hand went up just before you disappeared off, so I figured that was supposed to do with
Okay, so just to clarify that, and the second part really is just to in support of internal audit. I've said it before, but organisations and with the council will only improve when we identify these issues.
Oh, has Andrew gone offline?
He's muted, I think. He's muted himself.
Andrew, we could hear you, and now we can't.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go.
We're back. Slight hiccup. So yeah, over the years of working with internal audit, I found those reports thorough and invaluable. And it's just in support of what we have here in front of us is a plea for the rest of the organisation to really take everything that internal audits say and action it sort of accordingly, because it's only good for the organisation, and you know the quality of work is second to none. Thank you, Chair.
Well, I take it firmly in the same category as the peer performance panel with the recently met. I mean, it's all part of trying to improve, and it's all part of the journey, isn't it? So I think it's all very positive. So thank you for that, Andrew. We are asked to consider and approve. If we need to approve, we therefore need to get somebody to propose and second. Anyone willing to propose? Councillor Barry, and second Colin Foster. Yeah, I can see it. Okay, thank you. Okay, we're happy therefore to approve. We will move on, but we won't leave Andrew, I'm afraid. I don't quite know why the AGS sits with you, Andrew, but it does. So agenda item 7, the annual governance statement. Again, we've seen this previously. So Andrew, give us as much or little as you need to give us.
Thank you, Chair. And that's the very question I asked myself as well. But powers that be say that it's historical. Once we did it, now we can't get rid of it. So. In terms of where we are, Chair, you're absolutely right. This is a draft which has been brought to the committee's attention back in January, and there were comments from members. So this is just to say that the revised AGS has been updated to reflect the comments from committee. They're shown in 4.6 of the report. So we've incorporated a table in terms of complaints and a comparison of the last 3 years, both corporate and social services. And then there was an additional comment in relation to one of the significant issues, which came from the monitoring officer. And then the updated version of the AGS is now included for your information, Chair. And apologies, it does duplicate what is in James's report, which has made your papers quite long. But I felt it was appropriate that you at least saw the changes that have been made following committee last time round. So in terms of the recommendation, he says, I'll find the recommendation.
To recommend adoption by leader and chief executive.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot of scrolling up and down through papers to keep track of these things. Thank you for those alterations and the what's number one stands by itself and is obvious what it is, unless somebody's connected the dots. The significant issue for 24-25 is connected to the Fossa Fan area, which is being sort of redeveloped, and just to show there is, some discussions are still ongoing. Okay, thank you, Andrew. Really helpful document. Again, we've had chance to see this and comment on it in the past. This is now sort of closing the circle, so to speak. So has anyone got any issues, any final questions they wish to ask about the AGS before we recommend it for adoption? Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, we've been through the governance statement on occasions, on a number of occasions. It's not so much what's in this report, it's what's not in. And when I mention the things I'm about to mention.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, your flaky volume, you've gone again. There you
Got me back?
Yeah, you've got you back. Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm saying is there's crossover with item 12 in terms of forward plan possibly with this. So, I mean, I'll be guided by you in where we go. Again, it's related to Fossa Fan, and I've mentioned it previously. I know we've had discussions, Chair, about it, and I've had discussions with the 151 officer subsequently and with the Chief Exec. And it was about money being taken from the large capital grant fund. And some recent emails between myself and the Chief Exec, and I quote the Chief Exec, "The transaction was incorrectly coded against Fossa Fan Fund, and I can confirm the expenditure has now been correctly recorded against an appropriate service earmarked reserve." Many errors from that fund, and I think it needs to be picked up because of the seriousness of creating earmarked reserves that I certainly wasn't aware of, and neither were the other independent councillors aware of. And Section 151 of the Local Government Act 72, Sections 3243 of the Finance Act 92, and Section 25 of the Local Government Act 2003. It's all contradictory to that legislation. And I'm wondering why that's not in there. And because it should actually be in there, because these conversations went on from January of 2026, albeit the emails are a lot more recent. So can you explain why that's not in there? Because I think it should be.
I guess I'll put words in Andrew Wathen's mouth. This is the 24-25 report, and I suspect some of those conversations might be later than that. But I'm aware of this. Obviously, we've discussed this, Andrew,
yeah.
And I've had a conversation with Sarah King, although I haven't specifically had a conversation with the Chief Executive on it. I don't disagree with anything saying. I guess there's a threshold issue of what's significant and what's not, but I agree that things have been incorrectly coded or otherwise, then that's a significant issue and needs to be looked at. So I think maybe the route is to have a conversation about the forward work plan, either for this committee or a scrutiny committee, to decide what an appropriate route is to look at that. But I've talked to Sarah King about this, and she's got some ideas of how we can move this forward.
Okay, and sorry, Chair, there's just one other issue that occurs to me. I've never seen a report or an evaluation of the Shared Prosperity Fund. And we're talking about over £30 million, and I find it extraordinary.
You've gone again, Andrew.
Funding, which is likely to come post that. There are lessons clearly that have been learned during 2022 to 2025, and I've not even heard conversations in terms of broaching the idea of an evaluation of that period. But I think it's absolutely vital that we pick that up. And again, apologies because it may fall under item 12 in the forward work plan, but I really think that should be in our governance statement, because it's a huge amount of money, massively impactful on the county borough. And I just think for us not to be looking at this is extraordinary.
So, can I pick that up, Chair?
Sure, Andrew, go ahead.
Okay, thanks. So we can't include everything within the statement. That's just a given. But what we are talking about is are the governance arrangements in place to make sure we have appropriate mechanisms for spending public money appropriately. So apologies, Councillor, I missed some of that because you cut out a little bit.
Right.
But we actually did an audit of Shared Prosperity Fund in 25-26. So even though this statement relates to 24-25, and the overall opinion was that it was reasonable. Now we would make sure that there are appropriate controls in place to ensure that grant funding money was allocated accordingly. So in terms of some of the detail that you've talked about, that's something that we may or not have picked up in terms of the scope. I haven't got the scope in front of me of that particular audit. And if it was considered a significant risk, then the CMT would have had the opportunity to raise that with me to do additional work if so required. I don't know if Craig wants to pick anything up on that in terms of adding to that.
Thank you, Andrew, and everyone, Councillor Barry, for the question. I think you've covered completely there with regards to the assurance that was given in 25-26 around the SPF. Evaluation of the outcomes from that programme will be or can be provided through into a scrutiny report. I'm not quite sure if it's the Governance and Audit Committee's remit to look at the evaluation of the actual project. It's around the assurance that the funding has been allocated in accordance with the terms and conditions of the award of funding. And that obviously has come through the SPF audit that Regional Audit Service.
Sorry, Craig. One thing to add to that as well is I think RCT are the host for the funding in the area. So they would need to make sure that the allocation of Merthyr's money has been spent in accordance with the terms and conditions of that particular grant.
Yeah, I guess the questions are perhaps trying to frame Councillor Barry's question a little bit differently. I guess it's about, it might well be spent in line with terms and conditions, but did we get the best value for money from it? Because I'm thinking ahead to the agenda item 10A, which is about capital planning in councils, which is a reasonably damning indictment of not Merthyr at all, but of the whole system, actually, about capital funding, and that's quite interesting to see that. So maybe that's a wider conversation to have. As you say, it isn't necessarily for this committee because we aren't into decisions about what is or isn't funded. It's just we follow the rules and there's good governance. But if you say that's relevant to go to a scrutiny committee, I'd be happy for that to happen. But I'd like to sort of know that it has happened, I guess. Is that okay, Andrew? Andrew B?
Yeah, some of that cut out as well, so I didn't quite catch it all. But I get that Rhondda and TAF will have done an audit, but that is very black and white in terms of figures and governance. What I'm talking about, as you sort of indicated there, Chair, is there are lessons within this that we've got to pick up and we've got to learn and we've got to make sure that we deliver as best we can. And I'm not seeing anything that's other than this happened and that happened. Yeah. We need to know, what's best practice? Let's have that, narrative to say, what did we learn by it? Not just, the figures were right. But we need, that's a lot of money that's gone through this organisation. And we need to ensure that we're doing the very best for the residents of Merthyr by ensuring we spend and allocate and negotiate and speak to everybody to get their opinion of how it went. And that's where we need to be. Maybe this scrutiny may not be, but it's a job of work that needs to be done.
I don't disagree with anything you said there. The two things I would say though is, one, I don't necessarily think that's an internal audit job. It's more of a post-project review exercise, and I don't know whether the project team is fully long disbanded, I suspect, but that's a conversation to have. And secondly, where would that land? And I don't think it should land in Governance Audit Committee. It should land in the appropriate scrutiny committee. So I'm happy to sort of take that offline and talk to chairs, vice chairs of scrutiny committees and see where we get in terms of what's the appropriate route for that to happen. But I think we shouldn't lose sight of it, but I don't think it necessarily needs to become here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'll take that as an action as to take that offline and have conversations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where were we? Yes, we were to recommend adoption of this document, the AGS for 24-25, for approval by the leader and the chief executive. Again, if we are recommending adoption, we need a proposer and a seconder. Can I have a proposer, please?
Happy to propose, yeah.
Thank you. Seconder, please.
Seconded.
Okay, thank you very much. We've suitably approved. Thank you. This takes us on. I was going to say to the meat of in the sandwich, or the main filling. If you're on, yes, let's go there. The audited statement of accounts. We have a slightly messy situation here because we've got a main set of papers and we've got a supplemental set of papers. So we will flit between the two. But the idea is that we have item 8 proper, which is the statement of accounts, which is going to be James Hopwood. Then we have 8A, which is the audit inquiry with those charged with governance, which is going to be, I think, Craig. And then 8B, which is the audit report from Audit Wales, which I think is going to be Alice. So we play them in that order, and then we'll do a collective agreement of it all at the end. So James, if I can turn to you first.
Thank you, Chair. So as Head of Finance, I'm pleased to introduce item 8 on the 24-25 audited statement of accounts. So the main recommendation for this is recommendation 2.1, which is the audited statement of accounts for 24-25, which is the document in Appendix A, being the financial year ended 31st of March 25, be considered and recommended to the Council of 1st of July 2026 for approval. So that's the main recommendation that we're considering. As set out by the Chair, I'm just going to briefly introduce Appendix A, the audited statement of accounts, and then the Director of Finance is going to present a report on the audit inquiries to those charged with governance and management for 24-25, which then forms part of a letter that the Council sends to Audit Wales and accompanies the accounts presented to Council in July. And Audit Wales will then be presenting their report, item 8B, to talk about the audit of the 24-25 accounts. So we looked at the key financial messages from the accounts in detail in January, where the draft statement of accounts were presented. There have been no changes to the main statements or the totals of usable balances or reserves that the Council has. And the main highlights are that we've got a net worth to the authority of 258 million. We've got 33 million of earmarked reserves. And in terms of the balance sheet, we've got items such as 402 million of property, plant and equipment, which is alongside about 177 million of long and short-term borrowing. And we looked in detail at the balance sheet in January. Audit Wales in their report are going to go through the audit process in detail. The only other item to draw attention to is that the Council, since presenting the draft statement of accounts, has decided to repurpose some earmarked reserves to bring them together into a specific reserve called the capital risks reserves. And to some extent that reflects the fact that some smaller reserves were no longer needed by services, so there's an opportunity to repurpose them. And that reflects a decision by the Council around historical loans and capital projects, and to set aside essentially a financial buffer to identify and manage that risks. So that's the only major item that's changed, which is in note 10 of the earmarked reserves and page 146 of the pack and page 44 of Appendix A. So having briefly introduced it, I will then hand over to the Director of Finance and then Audit Wales to present their reports. Thank you.
Okay, Craig, you've been queued up. You're going to discuss 8A, the audit inquiries, those charged with governance and management.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The say 8A of the agenda today provides the Council's response in relation to the audit inquiries to those charged with governance. Audit Wales are required to conduct the audit in accordance with the requirements set out in international standards of auditing, and this document accompanies the statement of accounts report being brought to this governance audit committee, which James has just taken you through. Back in February, the letter was issued to the Council, and so the Audit Wales sought the view of myself as Section 151 officer and the Mayor as Chair of Council, covering a number of governance areas impacting the audit of the accounts, which are both relevant to management and to those charged with governance. These areas are covered and set out in paragraph 3.3 of the report before you today. Our responses in relation to 24-25 can be found from page 7 to 30 of the bundle, along with responses provided in the previous years in subsequent pages of the pack. I think it's important to draw to the attention of the committee today that the Council has robust policies and processes in place and takes the issue forward extremely seriously with a range of policies identifying prevalence of fraud and minimising the risk of that occurring. The submission of the document assists Audit Wales in their work and aids understanding of the Council's business process and supports its work in arriving at an audit opinion for 24-25 accounts. I don't plan to take the committee through the content of the report in any more detail, but I'm happy to take any questions before handing over to Alice from Audit Wales.
Thank you, Craig. I think we'll move on, and then if collectively there are questions about anything in the accounts, we'll come back around to it. So I think Alice is going to take us through the report, which is at 8B, but I think Sarah Jane is going to put up a few slides. So hopefully in the room you can see those slides. You put them onto full screen. There you go.
Yeah.
Alice.
Thank you, Chair, and yeah, thank you, Sarah Jane. The slides are up for us, so I'll ask you to flip through the pages as we go through. So today we are bringing you our audit of accounts report, which is the summary of the audit of the 24-25 financial statements. We attended some Governance Audit Committee training earlier this year, and as part of that training we suggested that we would bring PowerPoint presentations to these meetings to sit along what are quite long and detailed reports. So this is our first stab at these presentations. So if you have any comments or feedback on any of the 3 presentations we have for you today, please let us know, because we are all ears for anything that you as members would find useful to include on the slides. And we hope to draw out the key messages by doing that. So that's what we are attempting to do today. So we have completed our audit of the 24-25 financial statements, and I thought we would start here, which is a key audit messages summary. So the good news is that we intend to issue an unqualified opinion this year on the financial statements, which is great news. That is outlined in Appendix 4 of our report if you want to go and read the full opinion that we'll be giving. I like the clap that appeared on screen then, yeah. So that's the headline for you all, is that we are in a great position to give an unqualified opinion. I'm going to go into some more detail on a couple of these items, and the updated risk assessment is one of those. So following the detailed planning work that we undertook, we slightly changed our approach to the risks for the accounts this year. So I'll go into some more detail on that in a second. So in terms of misstatements, so these are errors or issues we found in the accounts. We identified a number of misstatements that were corrected. These are outlined in detail in our report in Appendix 2. I won't go through those line by line, but please, if you have any questions on any specific misstatements or corrections, please ask. I'm more than happy to take any questions on those. There also remains one uncorrected misstatement within the account to the value of £211,744. There is a lot of detail in the report and in the letter of representation from the council on what that uncorrected misstatement arises from. and it's in simple terms a contingent liability crystallised this year and should have been moved into a provision and provided for this year. It's not material, but it is above our our reporting threshold. So we've outlined it in our report and in the letter of representation. Another item I'm going to go into a little bit more detail with you is an update on the significant matter from last year. So we have an updated position on the quality of the financial statements. So I'll take you through that in a bit more detail. Finally, we are planning to certify the accounts, all going well at council, on the 1st of July, on the 2nd of July, and shortly before the end of the current Auditor General's term. We sometimes provide recommendations in the report. We've chosen not to do that this time because we needed a little bit more time to give you some meaningful recommendations. So we'll prepare an accounts memorandum to that extent and bring that back through committee once we've discussed with Craig and James with a little bit more time. So that's the overall position for you. Sarah Jane, will you move on to the next slide for me? Very quickly, I always like to talk to you about materiality. So this is the level to which we audit. Hopefully you're all familiar with this now. We give you a planning materiality and an audit plan, but this is the updated values. So our materiality is 1% of gross expenditure, and that gives a materiality level of 2.8 million at the council. We then have a reporting threshold, which is set at 5% materiality. So this is any errors above £138,000 we will report to you. If they're below that, then we won't. And obviously we will look at all errors cumulatively to make an assessment of whether they're above materiality. There are no uncorrected misstatements that are above that level. We also have two areas that we always classify as material by nature because they might be of greater interest to the public and the users of the accounts. So we have senior officer remuneration, which we set at a lower level of £5,000, and we have related party disclosures specifically when they relate to officers or members, and that is set at £10,000. That's an updated picture of materiality for you. Thanks, RJ. So this is, I wanted to talk to you about our updated audit risk assessment in a little bit more detail. So we received the draft set of accounts, and on receipt of those, we undertook our final detailed planning work. So planning is kind of a continual process throughout the audit. But importantly for the council this year, we've made a reassessment of the risks once we've received the draft statements compared to the initial audit plan we presented. So in the initial audit plan, we had a broad risk which covered the whole of the financial statements, but was due to the issues we found in the previous year. And in kind of the international auditing standards, we're required to call that a financial statement level risk. So it's very broad. When we received the draft set of accounts and after we discussed with Craig and James, we identified that some of those issues that were causing that risk had actually been resolved already, and that the quality and the preparation and the processes in place for producing the accounts were already improved. On that basis, it didn't feel appropriate to have that large overarching risk anymore. And so what we did is did a more tailored, focused audit approach where we looked at specific balances, disclosures or transactions where we felt there still remained quite a high level of risk of material misstatement. So really we've gone from a broad approach to a much more targeted, focused approach, which felt a lot more appropriate based on how the council has improved. So we've outlined all of that in lots of detail for you at Appendix 1 of our report, where you can see all the new risks since we presented the initial plan and the work that we did against those risks. I just thought importantly to note here that although we took a new approach to that overarching risk and focused it, didn't actually result in lots of savings in terms of audit work this year, but we anticipate it will in future years. So the fee that we reported in our initial plan still remains appropriate, but we hope that, and as we'll see when we present our audit plan later today, we'll hopefully begin to see that work reducing in line with this risk approach that we're taking. So I hope you all feel comfortable with that change in risk approach.
Yes, Craig.
We'll obviously be presenting our new audit plan to you, so we'll reflect the risks as they are now in that for the next financial year. Okay, final one, Sarah Jane, please. So I kind of just touched on it, but I wanted to give you an update on the significant risk we reported in 23-24. So if you cast your minds back to the same document from last year, we had a significant risk on the quality of the working papers and the draft accounts that were presented. I'm really pleased to say that the council has moved on in this respect. Significantly, the work of James and Craig and the team has been commendable. So there were big improvements in the working papers, the processes, the quality assurance regime, which meant that we did see an improvement in the draft accounts. And that has resulted in fewer issues and corrections that were required this year. It's probably worth saying that, you know, it wasn't perfect still, Craig. I think you'd be happy with that. There are still areas for improvement, particularly on how the council plans to produce the draft accounts in line with the statutory timetable moving forward, which we'll discuss a bit more with the audit plan. But we really wanted to present the picture that the council has improved, and just really commend the team on the work that they did with us for that. And we will continue to work with Craig and James as they produce this year's accounts with any lessons learned they take away from the audit process. So we'll look to do that very quickly now that this audit is concluded. So going back to the overall picture, good news, unqualified opinion. The accounts will be certified on the 2nd of July, all being well at full council, and we'll continue to work with Craig and James to see in further improvement, I guess, in the accounts for this year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alice. Very comprehensive, and I'm really happy with the PowerPoint presentation. That's a really neat way to get through it, because sometimes reading 20-30 pages of very formalised Audit Wales presentation in a certain style doesn't necessarily get you to the nub of the matter. So that's really helpful. Thank you. That's my initial feedback for you. I did take the one sentence in the report which took to heart, is we are pleased to report the quality of draft financial statements and supporting work papers had improved significantly, and I think that's credit to Craig and to James. I'm not surprised there was a dip, because we got through Section 151 officers in a hurry over the last couple of years, and it's nice that we now have a steady team and we're clearly reaping the rewards of that. We've gone through quite a lot of documents there, quite a lot of information. Anybody wants to pick anything up? Bill, do you want to come in?
Chair, can I thank the author who wrote this, say something like an excellent report, to be honest, because it shows you how much the council, how much the borough council have improved, county council have improved. Down the line, now we haven't stopped still. We're crazy up and Andrew up. We're working with officers to change it, to put better resources going forward. So I like the report.
I think that's a very, very helpful comment, Bill. And I think James and Craig now can step off the 24-25 wheel. The 25-26 wheel is ready to be leapt onto any second now. So I think the work doesn't stop for them, but at least they feel like they're moving forward. I've got two hands, Councillor Geraint Thomas and then Councillor Andrew Barry. Geraint first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And can I echo what Bill just said there as well? I think great report, and just thank the officers for the hard work that they've done over the last year or so. And I can see, that the team is growing as well, and that can only help, in getting the reports done and the accounts done sharper and quickly in the future going forward. So well done, Craig. I just want to bring you to one thing on the report, and just a little bit of clarity and a little bit of understanding for members and for the residents, really. On page 96, under 3.5, it talks about the moving of monies from earmarked reserves and the surplus, right? And then further in the report, and forgive me, Chair, I'm on my computer and scrolling back and forth is very difficult. It has mentioned then another reserve that we're going to use in the future as a bit of a fighting fund. I don't know if Craig or Anna can speak a little bit about that kind of movement from earmarked reserves to a specific reserve, please.
James mentioned it, but Craig, do you want to put a bit more colour on it?
Yes, Eddie. Before I do answer that, can I just relay my thanks to James? He's been an integral part in this improvement journey. But it's not only James, it's the wider team who's had involvement in putting together these statement of accounts. Their professional resilience, it's been a really challenging audit because of the risks that's attached. And the team have prepared themselves, excellently and delivered the report we have for you today. With regards to the repurposing of the earmark reserves, what will be proposed to full council on the 1st of July to approve is the repurposing of earmark reserves that are no longer required by service areas. That reserve will be held as a capital risk reserve to mitigate any future risk of repayment of any interest that had been accrued over a loan that was given to the local authority if the objectives of that loan are not delivered. So it's the report has said is the financial buffer. The financial buffer available to the organisation if that risk materialises into an issue. So that's what we've been proposing to full council to approve, is to hold those, bring those to be earmark reserves together, repurpose them to mitigate against future risk of that event happening.
Does that make sense, Geraint?
Yeah, it does. I suppose, you know, we'll take it offline to figure what that risk is. Perhaps, you know, Craig can't say it in this meeting at the moment, but I'll have a chat with Craig about it offline.
Okay, thank you.
Happy to do that, Thomas.
Thanks, Councillor Barry.
Thank you, Chair. Echoing a lot of what's been said there, really, and Councillor Thomas has picked up one area that I was quite interested in as well. But just to take a start, and you alluded to it, Chair, in that we went through a transition a little while back where it wasn't just the 151 officers, all the key financial team pretty much disappeared overnight. And, you know, we were quite fraught at the time, just making sure we got everything over the line. And it's great, you know, that Alice points out from a forensic perspective that that's really coming together now. And congratulations to Craig and his team for putting that team and that effort together so quickly, I think, from where we had all of that sort of difficult period where we were all trying to adjust, and certainly the financial.
Again.
And it was the issue really of that 3.5 which jumped out at me as well, and it's just clarity, I think, because it's not an easy sort of paragraph to get your head around, really. And I think I'd welcome the opportunity of a conversation offline with Craig and Geraint to establish exactly what we're talking about there, and how that links with the mantra of not using reserves that we've said in the past. So it's just that clarity really around that we need. But certainly in terms of where we've come over the last 18 months, 2 years, well done to Craig and the team.
Thank you, Andrew. I think maybe a note to the committee as a whole, rather than just one or two members, might be the solution, Craig.
Yeah.
Okay, take that away as an action. You can circulate that offline before the next meeting then. Sue, you got your hand up in the room.
Chair. It's just a question. Alice, it was a lovely presentation. It was really clear. I really appreciate that. As a member, you highlighted the contingent liability. And I just wondered, as members, do we need any sort of follow-up from assurance point of view on what action was taken in respect to that? Because it's a liability at the end of the day. So do we need to have any sort of anything at the next meeting to give us assurance of the action taken in respect of that treatment, I suppose?
Martin, Chair, are you okay to answer that question directly?
Go ahead, of course. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Sue. Are you talking about the contingent liability that will remain as an uncorrected mistake?
Yes, thank you.
So in terms of an audit point of view, we have no further concerns. When we identified the issue through the work that we do in respect to contingent liabilities, where we establish are the circumstances still relevant this year? Does it tip from possible to probable, which is where it tips from a contingent liability into a provision? It was when we did that work we identified this scenario. When we brought this to Craig's attention, he was kind of aware that actually, or agreed with our conclusion rather, that it should have been a provision. Given the work required to make that adjustment through the account for a non-material, nearly below our reporting threshold amount, it was decided just to leave it as an uncorrected misstatement. But Craig and James are aware that the treatment going forward will have to be as a provision. And so I don't think you need any other assurance other than kind of ongoing discussion that we have when we produce the next set of accounts.
Yes.
That will corrected. So I think as a committee, you should take assurance that Craig has included it in the letter of rep and is aware of the circumstances and doesn't disagree with our conclusion.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And effectively, it won't appear as a uncorrected error in the 25-26 accounts. That's the point. It will be dealt with before the 25-26 accounts are done.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Okay, thank you. Excellent. Okay, that was a really helpful conversation. Oh, sorry, Colin, I didn't see that. Colin, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just going to ask, and hopefully be a short answer, about IT systems, about IT legacy systems, and what impact they have on your timeliness and accuracy. Because obviously we're trying to catch up, aren't we, every year? And you know, where are we with that? Do you require investment with that? Is it a problem?
Are you referring to our current financial management system?
Yes.
With regards to our financial management system, there is investment required for us to maximise the potential of that system that we've currently got within the local authority. So that is an area that we need to look at going forward. But the investment in that is significant to bring that up to its full capacity and exploit all its advantage it can give to us as a finance team and across the whole of the other service areas. But with regards to improving the timeliness of submission of accounts, we're still going through a period of change with regards to staffing within the accountancy team. That should stabilise as we go through the autumn. That will allow us then to reflect completely on the recommendations that were provided to us for the previous set of statement accounts. It'll allow James to have that oversight of the quality assurance of the statement accounts, as well as having the quality of the working paper sitting below that. So we work on obviously the resourcing of the team, which will stabilise, as I say, but there is an area of work with regards to the financial management system, which will bring through more efficient ways of working.
And is that part of the IT strategy now going forward? Is that an objective?
It's right in the IT strategy, is right more than transformation, because maximising the use of the financial management system will provide a better self-serve arrangement where you have budget managers having timely information. There'll be less reliance on the accountancy team to provide that information, and then the accountancy team will be able to have the higher value input around business partnering. We look at how that can develop and improve our accountancy and financial management arrangements across the organisation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. Really helpful answer to that. Thank you. Great, we've had a really good conversation about the 24-25 account. It feels a little strange because it's so far looking back on my shoulder, I get a crick in my neck looking back that far. Nevertheless, it's duly done and it's properly done. We are now asked to recommend these annual accounts for 24-25 to the council for approval for the council meeting on the 1st of July. Can I therefore have a proposer and seconder, please? Colin and Bill, excellent. Thank you. Happy to approve? Okay, thank you. We'll take the agenda doesn't necessarily flow as well as it could do here, because we now take a sharp left turn away from accounts and audit to risk register, agenda item 9. However, our Audit Wales colleagues are not off, they'll be coming back when we get to 10 and 11. Agenda item 9, quarterly update of corporate risks for quarter 4, 25-26. Andrew Mogford, you've been very patient, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Chair. So you'll have had the report and the appendices to the report, so I won't go through it line by line, but I'll pick out some of the key points within that report. You'll all be aware this is a typical usual report that we bring in a series of reports once a quarter to the Governance and Audit Committee, relaying information about risk management generally, but more specifically to the Corporate Risk Register. You can see in the report that we've made steady progress, particularly the trend data showing that we've got one risk that's going down and the rest have remained the same. Our mitigation actions have shown an increase in the number of green actions and blue actions, blue meaning complete, and a fall in amber and only one increase in red. We've also reconsidered some of the statements around our risks, particularly around our safeguarding risk, where we've proposing that we tolerate that risk. One, because it's below the risk score that we that we put within the target. It's also that we've done all of the mitigation actions, and now the actions are business as usual, sitting both within that team and across the local authority. So it's proposed that even though we'll keep a watching brief, that we move that risk to tolerate as per our policy and strategy and best practice. We've also identified, again in line with the work that we've done with the Audit Committee, or Governance and Audit Committee and Scrutiny Committees, an opportunity risk, which aligns again to our policy and strategy, with that particular opportunity risk being around our Marmot programme, and we'll pick that up both in future risk reports and future reports which will go to this committee, no doubt Scrutiny and Cabinet and Council. As we do most years, we will refocus the corporate risk register now moving into the next financial year, learning lessons from last year, both in terms of delivery and what has come out of the workshops with elected members and co-opted members, both of this committee and others. We'll bring another report at the end of Q1 with those changes and with those points that I've just raised. And in addition to that, as per usual and per best practice, Chair, we'll bring an annual risk report to the next Governance and Audit Committee, provided you and the committee are happy with that approach. That report will look at our strategy and policy delivery, our findings over the last 12 months, in addition to findings and trend data across our corporate risk register and our quarterly reporting, and how that links in with performance and finance data. We've included in the report our internal recommendations, which are all complete, and I just go back to some of the points raised in earlier items. I'd like to thank Andrew and his team for the work that they've done on corporate risk with us over the last 12 months and further back than that, and picking up on some of the points that has been used to improve the way we manage corporate risks within the local authority. It does form part of our continuous improvement programme, so I'd like to thank him and the team for that. There is apparently another internal audit lined up this year, so that provides some additional assurances to what was mentioned earlier in the agenda, picking up against our corporate risks and how we govern risk within the organisation. In terms of training and development, I myself have been on additional training to do with risk, and we've also run risk training and awareness workshops with this Governance and Audit Committee and all scrutiny committees on the back of your recommendation, Chair, to make sure that the corporate risk register is embedded within scrutiny and its function. And we've also launched this year an online training module for all staff and elected members. So that summarises the report. I know there's a recommendation to note and debate the report, but prior to that, Chair, happy to take questions and comments.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm really pleased that it's the risk register flows through the scrutiny committees, because the role of this committee is to be sure that we have a risk management process in place. It isn't our job to manage each of those individual risks, however, it's for officers and to be scrutinised by the committee, so that's really helpful. Thank you. Just can I ask one question before I throw it open, which is around just timings and things. Obviously, this is Q4, which money would be January to March 26, because obviously we haven't got the end of Q1 yet. But you mentioned in some of the documents about sort of amendments that happened in May. So I'm trying to just trying to get my head around the CMT meeting in May. Has that been reflected in this, or is that going to be reflected when we get the next version, the next iteration, so to speak?
That's a good point, Chair. So in terms of that particular meeting that I referred to, that was when the corporate management team looked over this report. So it looked at the data and the trends as at the end of Q4. Okay. So those comments and feedback have been used to inform the detail within this report.
Okay, I understand. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And I think I just reiterate exactly what you said about it feels like there's a grip being got on risks. That trend table at 5.2, page 243, if anyone's keeping count, it shows a direction of travel. I think that's helpful to understand. I'd like to see more green arrows going down, but we are where we are, and tight resources mean though some of those risks aren't going away anytime soon, are they? But really helpful, thank you. Any questions for Andrew? Okay, I think Andrew, that means that you've answered all the questions in advance, which is really good. The tables I think are also helpful as well, although reading across the various sheets is sometimes hard work. I could do with my Blue Peter days and sort of sellotape pages together to make me understand them, but really helpful. Andrew.
That again is another point, right? So we've tried to address how we best present the corporate risk register, but working with peers from other local authorities, particularly those in England at a recent alarm conference and other conferences, we could produce a highlight report which looks at the risks in it, and we have spoke about that in previous meetings.
Yeah, of course we have. Yeah.
It's deemed it's on the to-do list, but not a priority because of the nature of the risks that we're going to look at. But that is something on the to-do list for this financial year. Maybe perhaps we could trial it with one risk. We'll pick one. We'll trial it and test it at the next committee chair. And if everyone is happy with that, we can roll that out then across all our risks, and we can present it in a slightly different way, which hopefully will be easier to read.
I'm happy to have that conversation offline, Andrew. If you want to play around with formats, etc., we can do that. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's to debate and note. I think we've debated. Are we happy to note? Thank you, Andrew. Really helpful.
Thank you, Chair.
On my set of agendas, I turn the page. Just in terms of making sure things flow in the right way, agenda item 11 we should take before agenda item 10, because one is again looking back to 25 and the other one's looking forward into 26. So if we'll take agenda item 11, which is the annual audit summary 2025, this is a two-headed, I can't say beast, two-headed affair between Alice and Sarah Jane. Play this if you want to. We're on page 285 of the bundle if you're keeping score.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Chair. So I'll share my screen again if that's okay. Bear with me. Please shout that you've received it or you can see it.
Perfect.
See it? Let me just start that from the beginning.
Good.
All okay?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, so we're going to talk you through our annual audit summary for 2025. You'll be aware that this is a report that we produce each year for you. So essentially, it summarises the work that we've done both on the financial and performance audit sides to fulfil our statutory duties. You may have spotted that it is a slightly different format this year. So it does include a bit of a forward from the Auditor General and also includes a one-page summary of our work. You may recall that last year we highlighted that our work had raised some concerns about aspects of the Council's arrangements to secure economy, efficiency and effectiveness in its use of resources. So these primarily related to difficulties meeting audit accounts requirements, financial planning, performance management and governance. For the next slide, Alice will just talk you through where we are now with this, and it'll lead on from some of the conversations she had earlier. Alice?
Thanks, Sarah Jane. I think we've obviously talked about this at some length already, so I won't linger on it too long. But we have seen a big improvement in the quality of the draft accounts and working papers. The relationship that they have with Craig, James and the rest of the team has been excellent and continues to be excellent. I think the findings from this year were that improvement, but as I said earlier, there are still some areas for improvement, and I think one that is really important is the timeliness of producing the draft accounts and how that gets back on track, because it's not going to happen in 1 year, but there needs to be a timetable for aiming for that, producing accounts on that statutory basis. So we continue to really engage well with the Council's finance team, but we need to continue to work together to ensure that for the future we're working towards that statutory deadline. So it's pleasing to note the improvement as we've discussed, but still some work to do. Thanks, Sarah.
Okay, so in terms of the performance audit side of things, you'll see that we found that the Council has strengthened its counter-fraud arrangements from the work that we did a few years ago. We also note that the Council's made some changes to its performance management arrangements. You'll be aware we did a review back in 2024. So some of those changes, for example, relate to its approach to self-evaluation and the integrated reports that members now receive. But we're also flagging that findings from some of our other work, such as our review of the planning service, is showing that some of those arrangements are not yet embedded across the organisation. So as part of our work that we'll be touching on in the audit plan, we'll be wanting to do a follow-up of that performance management review to understand the council's progress in terms of those performance management arrangements and whether they've addressed the recommendations. So in terms of overall, just to kind of reiterate that, the Auditor General has a duty. He has to assess whether the council's made proper arrangements to secure economy, efficiency and effectiveness in its use of resources. And so what we're highlighting in this year's annual audit summary is we very much recognise that the council is making progress, but it remains on an improvement journey. And our risk assessment is continuing to highlight some concerns in some areas around governance, service and strategic planning and oversight of performance. And much like what Alice was saying, really, it remains really important for officers and members to work closely together to improve and embed the arrangements, and we'll be continuing to monitor the position over the next 12 months. Happy to take any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Really helpful again having that PowerPoint just to sort of highlight some of the issues. It almost feels like the peer panel assessment all over again. It just talks about that journey. We're moving in the right direction. I think that's really, really positive. Any questions for Sarah Jane or Alice? Sue in the room. Go on.
Thank you, Chair. Just a little question, just for my own clarification, I think. On the slide you refer to the planning service, Sarah Jane. Is that in the context of the preparation of the accounts? Have I interpreted that, or if it's not, could you expand on that a little bit, please?
Yeah, Chair, are you happy for me to pick that one up?
Go ahead, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so no, it's not in relation to the accounts. We did a review of the planning service. So within the annual audit summary, there is a link to the report that we produced, which highlighted some things that are working well, but equally some things where the council needed to improve. And one of those, well, two of those are around service planning and oversight of performance. So that is why it's prompted us to say that some of those concerns still remain. But there is a link to that report that you can see on our website.
Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, makes sense.
That's really helpful. Just to check, earlier, Alice, you alluded to the fact that you hadn't included recommendations in your audit report on the accounts. So something specific on that is going to come forward in due course, but there aren't recommendations in this report. This report is more of a State of the Union report, isn't it? So we're going to have some recommendations specifically on financial reporting, which I suspect will come as no surprise whatsoever to Craig and his team. But you're not making recommendations. We need to do something about planning, do we? Are you? At this point, you're not saying that right now.
So sorry, so in terms of planning service, we made separate recommendations in that particular report. I don't know, Alice, if you would want to come in specifically on the recommendations you may be making on the account side of things.
Yeah, I think, Martin, you summarised it well, that we will produce those recommendations when they can be meaningful and impactful, when we've had a little bit of time to digest our findings from this process. But yeah, as Sarah Jane says, this document there aren't any new recommendations coming out of this document. It's just a summary of the position for the last year. And of course, there are recommendations throughout all of our reports.
So the recommendations that will come in due course to us, obviously on the accounts, are for the Governance and Audit Committee to consider. However, the recommendations coming out of the planning report, which obviously came through in months gone by, are for the Scrutiny Committee that deals with planning to look at. And I just wonder whether we need to formally push this back to them to ask the Scrutiny Committee to have a look over this. Would that feel like a sensible thing for us to do? With due respect, Geraint, I'll ask Andrew to come in because he might have the answer to this, and I'll come back to you, Geraint. Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I know we bring in a report either at the next committee or the one after that regarding the all external recommendations and progress against them to this committee for assurance. Okay. However, like you say, in terms of the detail, perhaps we want to raise that with the relevant scrutiny committee if you deem that that's the way that should progress, and I'm happy to do that if you want.
Yeah, okay, that sounds like a plan. Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, I'm just going to suggest the same thing, really, that it goes to the Thriving Scrutiny Committee, which Councillor Lee Davis is the chair, which covers all things neighbourhood services.
I never remember the names of the committees. That's really helpful. Thank you, Kevin.
We're all getting used to them, Martin. We're all getting used to it.
So are we happy for us to formally recommend that this report gets referred to the Thriving Committee? So they've got and there's enough cues in this that they will pick that up at what we're after, or should we just make a note alongside that says we are concerned to see that these issues are being re-raised now? If they think of formal words, I'd like to use. Perhaps Sarah, look at you.
Hi. I think it's worth just clarifying, because we made the recommendations we're making about the planning service are based on a review, that one review that we've done, but it did highlight broader concerns about the extent to which performance management arrangements were embedded across the organisation. So it helped provide a bit of a tracer, if you like. So I guess going back to your point about referring the particular planning services report to the scrutiny committee, it's probably not so much around saying that these are recommendations, concerns we've had with the planning service before, because that's not quite right, if you see what I'm saying. So it's more of an organisational point that we'll be picking up as part of our follow-up of performance management arrangements.
Okay, then maybe I take this offline have a conversation with Andrew and Sarah King about how we can best deal with that, and we can see how the organisation collectively deals with that. Does that make more sense? Okay, thank you. That's helpful. That's helpful. The report is first to note, and we duly note it. And now we turn to agenda item 10, because we're going in the wrong direction. We have two items. We have, first of all, the audit plan for 2026, and then we have the building blocks capital planning. So first off, we have agenda item 10, Audit Wales, Alice, Sarah Jane. I suspect another PowerPoint is coming our way.
No PowerPoint for this, I'm afraid. We thought you might be all PowerPointed out by PowerPoint 3.
No, not at all. Not at all.
No, okay, so it's handing positive feedback, so we'll note that for next time. As Chair, you've alluded to, the last two items that we've discussed have been looking backwards, and it's really nice to be able to take a look forwards. So this is our current audit plan for 2026. This report you'll be familiar with, because it outlines the output of our planning work that we've undertaken, both the performance audit work but also financial audit work, to establish what work we're going to undertake this year. So that will look at the 25-26 accounts and Sarah Jane's plan for work to be completed this year. So I will take you through the key points in this report. I'll try and give you the right page references so you can follow along in the report pack. But I'm also happy to take, and I know Sarah Jane's happy to take, any questions about anything that we might not have touched on as we update you. So we're going to start with the financial audit work that we have planned. And that starts on page 264 of the report pack. So this outlines the financial audit work that we're due to undertake, including the work in addition to the audit of the financial statements. It then takes you on to materiality again. So I won't rehash this too much, we've just discussed it. So our planning materiality is based on the materiality for based on the last account, sorry. So 2.8 million and 138,000 for the reporting threshold. We also, again, have highlighted the two areas where there's a lower materiality, which are the same as last year: £5,000 of senior officer remuneration and £10,000 for related party disclosures related to officers and members and related parties with those individuals. Bearing this in mind, then, we've produced a plan and outlined the risks that we've identified from our planning work, and that builds on the work that we've undertaken on the 24-25 accounts. So we have, firstly, a significant financial statement risk. This risk you've seen before. It's a risk that we can't rebut and we are required to consider significant under the auditing standards, and that's the risk of management override. Our response to that risk hasn't changed this year, and we continue to undertake the work to respond to that risk. We then have other areas of audit focus, which are other risks that we don't deem to be financial statement significant level risks. So some of these will be familiar to you as they are risks that we previously reported. So we have the valuation of the pension fund net liability and also the valuation of land and buildings. So I'll take those two together. We've identified those as risks because they're significant estimates that are reliant on source data and other areas of uncertainty, which could be, not that I'm saying Craig would, but could be subject to management bias. So we call these risks, and we undertake a lot of work to establish the basis for making that estimate and whether that's reasonable in the sense of materiality. So they're two very significant material areas that we think are risky, and we'll undertake work to address those risks. The next two risks that we have, which are on page 269, are senior officer remuneration and related party disclosures. So the reason we see those as risks are they are particularly sensitive areas, maybe of interest to the public, and they're areas where we have that lower materiality. So the chances are any errors we find are more likely to be material, and that's why we raise it as a risk. So they're those two on page 269. We then get into some more risks that are maybe new for you to see that we've just reported in the IS 260. So we've got the South East Wales Corporate Joint Committee transaction balances. So these balances and the way that they're consolidated into Merthyrs accounts are continuing to get larger and more complex. So there's a risk that that process of including the CJC's account into the Merthyrs accounts could be materially misstated because of the complexity. We then have accuracy of capital commitment disclosures. So this is a disclosure, it doesn't sit on the statements of the accounts, but we have had previous issues with this disclosure in prior years that have been material. So we still consider this to be an area where we consider that to be a risk of material misstatement. This also applies to the accuracy of capital grants. These have complex accounting judgments of when they're recognised, what the classification is, how we measure them. And so the complexity means that we feel there's a risk of material misstatement, and we did find errors this year in how they were accounted for. We then have the valuation of bad debt provision. So this we have found to be largely based on historic information that we feel might need to be updated because, again, it is an estimate. So we would consider that if the information wasn't updated, there's a risk that this might be materially misstated because the source data is out of date. So we've included a risk there and how we will respond to it. We've got then valuation of financial instruments. So this is things like loans and investments. So these sit on the statements of the account at carrying value, but they also need to be disclosed at fair value. And so that estimate of what the fair value of that financial instrument is, again, is a very complex estimation that is made. And so, again, this could be subject to variations that could make it materially misstated, again, based on values, uncertainties and source data. So it is the fair value disclosure that we're calling material here. And we've addressed that risk. We've outlined how we'll address that risk. We then have the accuracy and completeness of lease disclosures. So that's outlined on page 272. So last year was the first year that the council adopted IFRS 16, or were required to, and we did find some issues with how this was adopted, which related in some corrections that were required. So we see this as another risk area that if improvements aren't made in how the council captures and discloses that information, there could be a risk of material misstatement. We then finally, I think, yes, on page 273, have the risk around accuracy and completeness of contingent liability disclosures. So again, these don't sit on the statements of the account. There is a risk that things are either not complete or information has changed since last year that mean the accuracy of those disclosures are no longer correct. And so we've raised the risk around your contingent liability disclosures. So again, as you can see, that is taken what was once that broad risk, and we've come up with a series of risks that are sat there that are much more specific to the council and the nature of the issues we found previously. So it's helpful, I hope, to take you through those. We then, and we've touched on this already a little bit, I've got the financial statements audit timetable. So I am going to caveat this that we know that the production or the preparation of the 25-26 draft accounts is something that Craig and James are looking to improve the timeliness of. So based on the last conversation that we had, we have created this timetable where we will start updating our planning work in September 2026, with the aim of starting our audit work in October 2026, our final audit work, and progressing to hopefully bringing it to the committee and then full council for certification in January. So that's the timetable we're working to. Obviously, that will have brought the timetable on significantly from this year, And I know that's the hope of both sides, that we can achieve that and make those steps towards reaching that better statutory position. Okay, at that point, I'm going to hand over to Sarah Jane, who will take you through the performance audit work plan for the year.
Okay, thanks, Alice. So the performance audit side of things is captured from page 275 in your pack. So you'll be aware we undertake a programme of work that helps fulfil our proper arrangements and our wellbeing of future generations duties. And we do our work in line with InterSci standards, so they're international standards. For our wellbeing of future generations work, we do standalone work on objective setting, and we did that recently at the council. We did it back in 2023, but beyond that, we integrate consideration of the sustainable development principle into all of our performance audit work. So on page 277, we've set out the reviews that will be undertaken this year. So we're planning on doing a review of highways. So we recognise that this is a topic of considerable public interest at the moment, and we haven't done any work in this area for some time. We haven't determined the exact scope yet, but it will be focusing on highways maintenance. And we met with council officers, I think, the other week to just talk through our thoughts at this stage on the scope. And it's likely that we'll be doing that review at a number of councils this year. I think at the moment possibly around 10 or 12 councils. The other piece of work we'll be doing will be on cybersecurity. So you may be aware that the World Economic Forum's Global Risks Report last year identified cybersecurity as one of the most significant risks facing society. So this will be an audit that will be a very comprehensive review of the council's arrangements to manage cybersecurity and cyber resilience, and it'll be done by our IMT team. So it'll include a number of areas like risk identification, controls and incident response. To be clear, we won't investigate specific incidents, but the scope of our review has been informed by National Cybersecurity Centre's guidance. Just to make you aware, due to the sensitive nature of this topic, we don't publish these reports, and we would need to present it to you in a closed Governance and Audit Committee meeting. The third piece of work then, as I mentioned earlier, will be a follow-up review of performance management arrangements. So back in 2024, we found significant weaknesses in the council's arrangements. So we're keen to do a follow-up to see, how the council has addressed the recommendations we've made, and knowing that they have made some changes to those arrangements. In terms of timescales, we are aiming to complete all of our work by June next year. You'll be aware we provide updates to Governance and Audit Committee and to the Council, I think it's twice a year now, so the next one will be over the summer. And that also covers the work of CIW and Eston. So just moving on to the fees. So our fees are set out on page 280. They cover our financial and performance audit fees, and includes an estimate of our fees for the current year as work is ongoing. As Alice mentioned earlier, on the account side, our estimate reflects a net reduction of 3.8% on the prior year's estimate, which very much reflects the council's improvement journey, but on the assumption that further improvements will be achieved. The overall fee increase is around 5.3%, and that is in line with our published fee scheme. But it's important to highlight that the fees are an estimate. Under legislation, we cannot charge we can't make a profit on our work, so we don't and cannot make a profit. We can only charge you what it costs us to deliver the work. So if it doesn't cost as much the fee, then the council gets a refund, for example. So it's really important that you're aware of that. And just to highlight the audit team then, so that remains as last year and all are independent of the council. And then the plan also covers our approach to audit quality. And then finally, on page 283, there are links to various resources that we provide. This includes our data tools, our newsletter, and our good practice exchange events. Happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Sarah Jane. Really helpful. Interesting list of the risks, and I know the reasons why we discussed them earlier this afternoon. A number of these risks may not be articulated like this, but they are standard areas: management override, risk of fraud, etc. Those kind of things crop up in every single local authority. In fact, every single audit you do, don't they? So I'm heartened by the fact that it isn't, oh my gosh, Merthyr at risk of these things happening. It's they are standardised ones. On the performance audit, I couldn't quite tell, but I think you've said, Sarah Jane, that the performance audits are specific, they're local rather than national ones. And I'm sure the entire population is looking forward to reading the pothole report, as I'm sure it's going to be called when it's finally done. I continue to get frustrated by the audit fee where it says 5.3%. I think the only people in the world who's getting a 5.3 increase, everybody else is getting less money. And whilst I hear the point about we can't charge more, that says nothing about efficiency, does it? I could be really inefficient and only charge you what it costs, but it wouldn't be as cheap as it could have been done. So I continue to push back on that. It drives me to distraction, that line now. So you can come back if you want to. You're right. Go on, Sarah.
We to come back now, Chair. Do you want me to come back
ahead
on that now? I mean, I think just to reassure you that we are, as an organisation, looking at how we can be more efficient, looking at our operating model, for example. And I know the Auditor General wrote out to all councils explaining why we're putting up our fees to the extent that we are. But please, it's worth noting that in the prior year, I think our fees only went up by 1.7%. And also in the audit fees letter, it gives a comparison of our fees to those that are in England. And there's a report by the Audit Reform Lab, which shows that the fees in Wales are much more favourable than those in England. So I think it's worth being aware of that. But just to reassure you, we are too kind of looking at how we can be more efficient. So we've reduced our travel costs, for example, we've moved to new offices, all of those kind of things. So we're not any different in that respect. But yeah, we understand where you're coming from. But I just wanted to give the committee a bit more assurance more widely. Thank you.
The comparison with England is particularly disingenuous because, of course, their audit firms are not like Audit Scotland or Northern Ireland Audit Office. But so I don't think England's the best comparator we should use. But nevertheless, let's move on for that. My feelings been well made, and to the new Auditor General as well. I've already had conversations with her about it. Councillor Barry, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Just want to go back to 268, page 268, the valuation of land and buildings. And we've had some issues with the level of maintenance required on those buildings, and obviously as we get through that maintenance, it affects the valuation of those buildings as well. Is that the type of thing you'd be looking at as well in terms of how we're progressing? I think the figure was about 40 odd million that we were saying we were behind by. So is that a material consideration for you in terms of looking at that area of work, or is it just the valuation and how we go about that per se?
Alice.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Barry, for your question. Yeah, you're correct. So the work that we do here is purely focused on the kind of accounting valuation of land and buildings and whether that's been undertaken appropriately, so that the correct value of those assets is reflected in the financial statements to a material level. We aren't looking at how council maintains their buildings. That's not part of the account audit, so that's not the focus. It is looking at how those valuations are correctly calculated or estimated, calculated and reflected in the financial statements.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, Bill. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Chair. You did mention you're doing a security check on properties or land on this audit.
Sorry, I did.
Well, I thought that he says they're doing a security check on
Cyber security.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm thinking security where they've got solar panels and all big fields out. So the big cost in that, so that's how it's thinking. Sorry.
Yeah, and so cybersecurity is going to be is obviously a big deal as well. And I mentioned AI earlier, and I'm sure that's in there as well. Absolutely. Okay, thank you. We are the report is here for us to note, and we duly do note it. And now we toggle our laptops over to the supplemental list, and we're on to 10A, which is the audit So all Wales, I think it's audit report, capital planning and councils are the building blocks. So Sergeant, to you first, and maybe Craig to talk about it in terms of the Merthyr perspective.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Chair. So yeah, we do have another presentation for this, so I'll share my screen. Okay. Please shout when you can see it.
Yep.
Does that come through? Okay, I'll just start the slideshow. Okay, there we go. So this is a presentation highlighting the findings from our study on capital planning. So first of all, I thought it'd be helpful just to kind of explain what we mean by capital planning and why we felt this was important. So we touched on some of this today already, really, through the accounts, but capital spending is, as it says there, money spent by the council to acquire, create, upgrade and maintain assets that they own or have the right to control. So they determine how they spend their capital through their capital plans and strategies. Why is it important? Well, capital spending, helps councils to provide a wide variety of key services. And also crucially, in 23-24, we found that council spent nearly 2 billion on capital projects, so a large sum of money. But this shows, it's public money, but this emphasises why it's so important that councils ensure that they get best value for money from it. And capital plans and strategies are a way that councils can actually set out how they plan to achieve value for money from their capital spending. So I just wanted to give a quick kind of overview of what we were talking about there. So in terms of the scope and methodology, so just to make clear that we published this report early on in the year, so it is available on our website and I know it's in your agenda pack. This slide sets out what we did and didn't cover, but crucially, the main thing is that we looked at how well councils and Wales plan the capital spending. So, for example, we looked at how well informed the plans were, how clear the outcomes were, we looked at asset condition information, and also reporting arrangements and whether councils are evaluating value for money. So in terms of the overall findings, so we recognise that councils deliver, a number of capital projects and they maintain their assets. But what we found was it wasn't always clear how capital plans are helping councils actually deliver their priorities. And this makes it really difficult for them to know if they're actually achieving value for money, because value for money is about understanding, well, did you achieve what you originally set out to, your intended outcomes? So our findings also highlighted the need for councils to improve information on condition of assets, but also in terms of evaluating capital projects. In the report, though, we do really recognise the challenges councils face, including how Welsh Government administer grants. And you'll see later that we have included a specific, 2 recommendations for Welsh Government. So as part of our study, we've actually developed a checklist to help councils review their approach to capital planning. And this covers training for councillors, asset condition, and assessing effectiveness of capital projects. So we make 1 recommendation for councils and 2 for Welsh Government. I'll just go through some of the findings in a bit more detail. So one of the key findings is around grant funding. We found that the processes don't always help councils to plan for the long term or understand if they're achieving value for money. And grants are actually the main source of funding for capital spending. So some of the issues that we highlight in the report relate to timing of grant funding. So as I said, that makes it difficult for councils to plan for the long term. Restricted grant funding for councils also isn't coordinated across Welsh governments. They often come from different departments. And we found that councils sometimes apply for grant funding to deliver projects that don't actually reflect their local priorities. So our second finding was around outcomes. So what we found was the intended outcomes of capital plans are generally not clearly set out within councils' capital strategies and plans. So capital plans tend to focus on how councils are following borrowing rules rather than setting out that strategic vision. They also don't show how the plans will support delivery of their priorities or their wellbeing objectives, and they don't clearly explain the aims for capital planning. And I guess crucially, they don't set out how they will achieve value for money in their plans. You're going to see a bit of a message, a theme coming through here. The third finding then was that the reasons for the need for capital spending are not always clearly set out by councils. So we found that councils don't generally have a comprehensive understanding of the condition of all their assets. This varied by council, but overall that's what we found. And councils don't clearly set out how they respond to national policy or corporate risk. So, for example, they're not setting out how they're responding to the eliminate profit from children's services, for example. We also found that there's a real opportunity for councils to work more closely with partners in terms of their spending, and then not assessing or not clearly assessing the equality and socio-economic impact of their plans. And lastly, on this slide, we also found that lack of officer capacity was actually limiting some councils' ability to develop their capital plans. So the next key message was around reporting and evaluating value for money. So the reports that we reviewed, we found that they generally focus on spend and budget monitoring, which is important, but we found that they didn't focus or understand whether those projects were actually delivering or achieving the intended outcomes and therefore value for money. We also found that councillors don't receive or don't regularly or often receive training to actually help them oversee capital planning. So in terms of recommendations, we make 3 recommendations in the report. One is for councils to review their capital planning arrangements, and I mentioned that we've developed a checklist to help councils do this. And then we've made 2 recommendations for Welsh Government, which relate to their grant process to ensure that they're proportionate, consistent and coordinated, and to provide longer timescales and notice for grants announcements. And that is very much to help councils plan over the longer term. And the council has produced a management response form which sets out its how it will adjust the one recommendation, and happy to take any questions, but equally happy to pass over to Craig to talk through the council's response. I'll end the slideshow there and stop sharing if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah Jane. Really helpful presentation, and again summary of the report. This is an all Wales report. Once you say some councils have and some councils haven't on various things, you're not doing a local report that says where we are. And are you going to commit to saying where we are in the pack? Are we good? Are we bad? Are we good in places like the Curate Egg?
So just to be clear, so the way we approach our kind of national studies work is we have reviewed all the documents from all 22 councils, but we've undertaken more detailed work at a number of sites, but it's helped us draw together some themes. Yeah. So we haven't produced local reports for any council, so it is sort of drawing all together in terms of what those overall themes were.
And my general summary is it feels like a document that Andrew Barry could have written, because the issues he's raised are specifically around some of the things you've talked about making sure we have value for money, etc. So with that, I'll bring Andrew in first and then get around. Andrew, go ahead. Your picture's frozen, by the way. I don't quite know why, but we can still hear you. That's the important thing.
Am I back with you now?
Yeah, we can hear you. That's all that matters.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's fascinating, this particular report. Two questions for me, really. We've got some major capital projects at the moment, and over the years we've gone to length, and I've certainly gone at length to point out the danger of a £4 million overspend, as it turned out to be. So whose responsibility would an overspend in a capital project be? We were told that Welsh Government will pick it up, we were told the contractors will pick it up, and ultimately responsibility of us at the council. Is that something within the scope of this report that you would have looked at?
Sorry, Jane.
If I can come in, no, it wasn't something we specifically looked at, and just to be clear, we didn't look at any individual projects or where they were or progress against those. It might be better that Craig or an officer comes in to talk you through how the council manages that. It would probably be dependent in terms of where that funding comes from. But we would certainly anticipate, I think, that there'd be an overall oversight to understand the picture and what the council is doing about it, whether it be working with contractors or otherwise. But it wasn't a particular focus in this piece of work. It was very much around capital planning, so the kind of front end of the process, if you like.
And to be clear, I'm not looking for specific reasons within that example, but it just appears there are always overspends in capital projects, and we always end up paying more. So it's that idea of, why we never end up paying what we're originally sort of quoted would be the idea of it. So, I don't want to get into the minutiae of that, Craig. I mean, that's fine, we can talk about that again. But so it's the overview that you're looking at. The other thing for me is how the capital projects are driven. You know, we talk about the grants, and it's fascinating to me to think, are we financially led with all our capital programs, or is it politically or ideology that determines the capital projects? There just seems to be a little bit of disconnect between the two, and there's essential work under capital projects, which I absolutely get in terms of business profile. But do you have a view on that?
I think it's not for me to say where the council spends its capital money. That's up to the council, obviously. But you know, just to reiterate, one of the findings from our review or our study was that councils were not showing how their capital plans support the delivery of their wellbeing objectives. So that is a key part of understanding value for money, isn't it? As I said, is setting out at the outset what you're looking to achieve, but it's not for us to comment on individual projects.
No, but I think it's that disconnect you've described there that I think we need attention. And for me, you know, I think we just need a connection between what we're trying to deliver for the people of the area and how we go about that. And it's not seen as just being, it's business as usual, we get a grant and we'll do that. They need to see that we have an ideology and a focus for the future, you know, and give hope to them that that's the direction of travel. And it just seems that the two never quite fit together.
And I think that's the frustration with capital funding, and I think this report teases some of this stuff out when it. I think the phrase it uses about interesting practices by Welsh Government is a phrase which I'll test you on later. What do you mean by that, Sarah Jane? But the problem is the council ends up chasing money, and it says, wait, we've got money for new schools. So sometimes, I'm not saying this is Merthyr by any stretch, but they said, if we've got money for new schools, then we'll build a new school rather than repair the one we've got. Because that's where there's something dangling on a hook, there's a shiny thing dangling, so you go to chase it, and you have perverse decisions being made as a result. So I think that's a fair point. Sarah Jane, what interesting practices are you talking about in the report? Is it interesting? A phrase leapt out to me when I read the report.
I mean, I think, to be honest, it kind of lends itself to the recommendations we've made to Welsh Government, which is very much around that we found that it's not coordinated. You get different grants coming out from different departments. They can be very short term. You might get very short notice about applying for those grants, which makes it really
this year and all this kind of things.
Yeah. I mean, these are all issues that councils have been talking about before, and we've talked about, the Auditor General has talked about this before in other publications. So there are probably no surprises there, but that's why we've made these two recommendations to Welsh Government, because we recognise it makes it tricky for councils to plan for the long term because of some of those practices.
I'll bring Garrett in, then I'll give Craig the opportunity to talk about the management responsible. Garrett.
Yeah, you must have seen me nodding along, I think, to Sarah Jane when she was going through her slides, because I agree with most of what she said, and particularly the bit about the councillors' training. I think that's so important because, you know, I've been doing this now for 9 years, and it's surprising how many councillors don't understand the difference between capital and revenue, right? And that's across Wales. It's not just a Merthyr issue. That's totally across Wales. But I agree with you. You know, our capital spend should be supporting our corporate plan and our well-being objectives. That's what it's about. We shouldn't be just spending money for the sake of spending money. It should be targeted for where it's actually needed. And Martin, you are right. Sometimes repair what we've got instead of getting new. Right, it could be cheaper in the long run going forward. So yeah, I really welcome that. I think that was a bit of a breath of fresh air for Welsh politics.
We'll see what happens in Cardiff Bay. Craig, do you want to talk about the management responsible?
Yes, I think the conversation just had has covered a lot of the areas. It's a pleasing report to receive, obviously with recommendations for local government and for Welsh Government being covered. Obviously, it's an all-Welsh report thematic. We weren't specifically involved, but our published information is being considered. And we will adopt the checklist that has been published, and that's very useful. I mean, just for committee with regards to the recommendation one with regards to the review of capital planning arrangements, we've launched a capital oversight board. First one will be sitting on the 25th of June this month, which is an officer board which will consider alignment of our capital investment to the corporate priorities, well-being objectives, all stipulated within the Welsh, within our medium-term financial plan, where we align our resources to deliver, as I say, priority areas, health and safety, or statutory requirements. So that is a board that's going to be convening on the 25th, as I said. I think you can see the responses that are included in the MRF, that we've taken the Audit Wales recommendation seriously, and we'll be looking to put them in place with immediate effect or as soon as practically possible. Our reporting around capital is focused primarily on the financial aspect and not on delivering that realisation and reporting of that. That's an area that we need to strengthen and bring forward. Training for our elected members. We annually run treasury management training, but we can obviously look at how we can develop capital training, both as refresher and for induction from May 2027. So that's an area that we'll take forward. The exhibits presented in the report are useful, and we will be networking with neighbouring authorities to see where best practice exist and how we can bring that into our capital arrangements going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Craig. A comprehensive response, actually. I think it's really helpful considering the two of the recommendations for Welsh Government, and they will obviously do what they need to do. I'd ask from the committee's perspective is when you do member training, please include the co-opted members here as well. It's really helpful for us to sort of get that training as well, so we understand what's going on and actually see that all the others understand what's going on as well. Sue, do you want to come in?
Thank you for the report. Really, really interesting report. And obviously from an all Wales perspective, I just wondered. I've got 3 questions, so I'll just run them quickly by you, if I may. What were the strengths that you identified from this review? And will you be undertaking another review in the future as the next stage of the capital projects process? Whether that's operation or looking at outcomes or whatever that scope would be. And in terms of training, just to echo other members, I endorse the need for councillor training, but I was just wondering from your perspective, was there a general sense of officers training, further training of officers needed as well? They're obviously on the front end of delivering those capital projects and integral to the planning process. Sorry to bombard you, those 3 questions.
No, it's okay. I think I've captured them, so I'll take them
order.
in no particular order, yes. So in terms of the officer training, that didn't come out as a particular finding, so we didn't feel that we needed to raise that as such, but we did identify the concern around member training, so to be clear on that. You asked about whether we intend to do another review. So what will happen now as part of our local work and as part of our local risk assessment, local teams will monitor the council's progress in implementing that management response form, and we will, across the piece, look at how councils are doing to respond really, and then as part of our broader work programme consider whether we need to do any further work. We don't have any further work planned at this stage because it will now be through those kind of local mechanisms. In terms of the strengths question, I think it's fair to say we came at this very much from a wanting to be highlighting where councils could improve their arrangements, and we were required as part of the legislation to make recommendations where we found that to be the case. I think it's fair to say, clearly councils do manage huge capital projects, and not just new projects, but in terms of maintaining their assets as well. So we have more focus on the themes of areas for improvement rather than some of the strengths, to be honest. So I appreciate the report doesn't kind of go into depth around some of the strengths that we found. It talks about where we found some variety. For example, I mentioned around condition of assets. Some of that we found was better in some councils than others, but overall we felt that was an area for improvement.
Thank you, Sarah-Jane. Thank you everyone for that contribution, really helpful. And Andrew will make sure this recommendation is tagged onto our recommendations list, and that'll come, Andrew Morford, Tony Andrews here, and make sure that campus comes back to us in due course to keep track of that management responsible. Okay, thank you for that, Sarah Jane. We now move on to the last substantive item on the agenda, which is agenda item 12, which is the Governance and Audit Committee Forward Work Programme 26-27. I'll pause and I guess, Andrew, wasn't you introducing this one? Just quickly before Andrew come in, one thing I should do in terms of just general management, our meeting is now 5 o'clock. Are we all happy that this is the best time? Is this working? Perhaps this is a pause and reflect moment in terms of does 5 o'clock work better than everybody for everybody else? Attendance has been terrific today, and so has participation. But do we think this is going to work? And maybe those pre-meetings should be 4:30 instead of 5 to help fit with timings and make sure everyone can attend as much as possible. But let's. I'm happy to have a conversation if anyone's got any issues on that specifically. I'll tee that up rather, and Andrew can talk about the programme, and then we can circle back around at the end. Andrew.
Thanks, Chair. This is the last report for me. You'll be pleased to hear today.
Last one for everyone.
And the Forward Work Programme has been already mentioned several times this evening, but this is an indication of what reports our members will be receiving in forthcoming meetings of your committee. So we've outlined what's going to happen next in the September meeting, and as Andrew Mockford said, there will be an update in terms of progress against external recommendations included within that agenda. There are a couple of things which we may need to add in, but if officers could let me know, or Chair, if you could let me know if there are any changes to this, then we'll try and accommodate that moving forward. We've already picked up there's a training schedule which needs to go on, so for members of Governance and Audit Committee specifically, and we have talked in the past about terms of reference specifically for this committee, so we'll incorporate that in the work programme. That is the next meeting, and then what we've done then is in the appendix we've matched the requirements as per the Constitution on the left hand side and given you an indication of when those reports will be coming into committee for you across the municipal year. It's fairly self-explanatory, Chair, but happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. I'll turn to our Audit Wales colleagues first, because I suspect, given we've just discussed in the plan for what's coming down the pipeline in terms of cyber, etc., that the names of some of the reports and the timings of the reports and the national and local reports might need some tweaking. So maybe you can slot those in. So I don't know if you've got specifics, or are you just going to say it needs to change?
Yeah, there are some specifics. So I think the housing adaptations and recruitment and retention, if they could come to the next Governance and Audit Committee meetings, yes, obviously they weren't ready for today. Yeah. And I think the programme also says it's an annual performance management and financial sustainability reports, but there aren't annual reports as such. I think they're just topics that we've done previously. And I think at the moment it also talks about a planning review ad hoc report. I think that relates to our planning services report. But I'll drop Andrew a line to just summarise some of that. But yeah, those are key things we'd like to be changed in the future programme, please. Thanks.
Terrific. Thank you. Any other questions? The dates have all been published. Unless anyone has any strong objections, we will stick with our 5 o'clock meetings. We've got the dates there set in. We'll set up some training days through the year, hopefully well trained, so well trailed, so everyone's got the opportunity to attend. Let's see how we can move those going forward. So Andrew, you and I can work offline to make sure we get those dates in diaries. Sure. Get some guest speakers even. Might use our colleagues from Audit Wales to help us along as well. Fine, we've really positive. The report is for us to note. We've already discussed some amendments, and there may be more amendments to come offline. Thank you for that. Agenda item 13 says reflection evaluation. Really positive meeting. Thank you. We've gone on for a little bit longer than we usually do, 2 and a bit hours. Very positive. Thanks for forbearance in this heat. I'm sure committee room 1 is usually the coldest room in the world, so I'm really, hopefully it's not that today, I suspect. So thank you everybody for being there. I think our next meeting will be using the new all singing all dancing system in the chamber, so I will try to be there in person, which will make life a lot easier. So thank you everybody for your forbearance and contribution today. Any other reflections anybody else wants to say, except can we all go home now? have a cold drink in the garden somewhere, I suspect is the answer. There are no urgent other business deemed urgent by me. So in that regards, I will say thank you and call this meeting to a close. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks,
Good
Chair.
evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.